Hey, what is going on, IK Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder, and today we are back again for another Infinity Kingdom Dope Sauce video. And this topic that we're going to be covering is going to be pretty big because this is something that the community has been asking for a while. I actually told the community on the official IK Discord that I was going to be covering this, and I think it's very important for us to be able to analyze, assess, and really figure out what a good direction going forward in a game and for the community, which is all encompassing, right, of free to play and pay to win players, on how we can really progress and move forward, right, together as a unit. And so I'm going to be touching on a couple big things today, which is going to be in regards to the Post 1.8 update that just recently came out. So there's going to be at least 6 things we touch on. And I'm going to go in order. I'm also going to have time cards down below. Before I do officially get started, though, make sure you guys sub, like, ring that notification bell. Of course, if you want to join our conversation, you can hit up our Discord, which you can find in the pinned comment and description down below. Okay, so the first thing we're going to touch on is going to be talking about the level increases, right? This is going to be from 40 plus, along with, we'll also be touching on number 2, is going to be talking about some of the new skills that have been added in and a couple points there. We're going to talk about migration, focusing on the season system, how that may affect your main account going to a newer server. We're also going to talk about how this affects jumpers, this is point number 4. And then number 5, we're going to talk about the epic return and how this kind of goes into grand promotion bundles. And then 6, we're going to be touching on some of the patch notes, hotfixes, changes that are happening sometimes kind of under the radar, so to speak. And we're at least going to be covering those 6 things. So let me start off first with the level 40 increases, right? So we're tentatively hearing that what we're going to end up seeing here is it's going to go from 40 up to arguably 45, right? So we're thinking about 5 levels, give or take, here when season 2 hits. And then you can see here, right, if we scroll down, you'll see season 1, we're going to get some new ToK skills. Season 2, that's when we get the new level limits. There's also going to be some more new content. And then season 3, we'll get more ToK skills, right? I think there's at least 4 that have been released so far. And then when Conquest season hits, we're going to go right into additional levels and then more new content, right? So if we look at in-game, just to kind of give you an idea here, you can see that the test season, so from what we're hearing, the standard way that servers, right, and this is just kind of rumored based on of what some of us have heard on the CC team, along with what has been also mentioned publicly. So this is something where the anticipation is going to be that new servers will go into the prep season, then they'll bypass the test season, right? It'll go right into season 1, like that'll be standard, right? Which makes sense because the test season arguably was just that, a test season. So you'll go prep season, then into 1, 2, 3, and then conquest, right? So your first KVK is going to be 1 that basically gives everyone 4, right, up until, or I should say once you hit conquest there. Now, how the level system will work is that everyone will go into prep, right? And then season 1 is when it's probably going to be that standard 45 days that we're seeing. And then season 2, right, this is what's happening. So what we're essentially hearing, and this has been mentioned publicly as well, is that the servers here, right, it could be 1 through however many are here, 115. Some people have said it might be like 1 through 92 because 93 was when, excuse me, the new batch of region servers opened up, and that's when it kind of started 93 through 97 when you ended up having that Contention of Legends big event, right? For some of the Asian servers that were coming on board and a few others. So what we're hearing is that it's going to be, right, like a good amount of the servers here that are in season 1 that participated in the test season, possibly some additionals, will go right into season 2, right? And that could be happening within, some people have mentioned around January 17th, right? It could be mid-January from what we're hearing. But the important thing here to take away on the level increases is that, and this is what I will say publicly, I think it's very important to understand that, you know, if you look at other games, right, and I will use one just as a prime example. You take a game like Rock, and this game has been out for a while. They themselves have not raised their any kind of level, right? Like, so the game officially released like September 20th, 2018, right? So we are, right, what, 3+ years 3 1/3 years, right? And they have not released any new levels, right? I believe they have released new VIP. And there's a few other like additional VIP levels and a couple other things here and there. But in that game, right, you're stuck at like not stuck, but the limit there is 25. In IK, the limit is 40. And I just look at a successful game like that, and you compare it with Infinity Kingdom, right? And there's a good amount of similarities, right? But there's also a good amount of differences that make Infinity Kingdom very unique and allow for it to be a standalone game in its own right, which is fantastic. But I will say that it is just too early to release new levels. I understand the idea. I understand the concept, right? You want to give people more content, right? Especially for the people, especially for the spenders more so, right? Because there's more spenders than there are free-to-play players that have hit level 40, right? And are closer to maxing everything. And I'm sure some have, but they're always going to be closer to maxing everything that's available to them. When you just think about buildings and academy tech, right? Like those are probably the two big main holders there outside of you always working on leveling up your immortals. You're pretty much going to be working on that and dragons, right? You can couple immortals and dragons. But when it comes to actually just queue buildings, right? These types of things within your city, excluding those, right? It's really just buildings and academy tech. So, you think about you think about the gap, right, essentially that you're creating just from increasing the level 40 limit. Personally, again, as I mentioned, it is just too soon, right? A couple cons, right, will happen from this. One, you're going to start enacting what I refer to as level chasing, right? But more importantly than that, you're going to be spreading the gap between free to play and pay to win players, right? Just in simplistic terms, that much more. Why? Because the moment that you increase the levels, right, what's going to happen? You have, the majority of your spenders are already max level on their buildings, so they're already saving a lot of those building upgrades. They're going to be able to boost right away, and whatever they're not able to boost, right, they're just going to spend to get there. So, then it's also just going to take the free-to-play players that much longer to get there, right, after the levels come in, right? So this is just something that can cause demoralization, right, and really just a dissatisfaction of morale. Right, it can really lower morale overall. And so I think those are a few reasons, along with the fact that when you increase levels like this, right, the challenge is that you kind of set this scary precedent for the game, which is that, okay, well, the game's been out about a year, almost a year now. You're increasing levels. Who's to say you guys aren't going to keep increasing levels, right? And when you look at it from a progression standpoint, the majority of players want to get max level. Like, remember, it's not like just because you hit Castle 40 that it's over, right? You have a lot more to do. Even with me being at 40, I and having all my buildings at 40, I do not care about more building levels, right? Like, I'm happy that I can sit here with a bunch of RSS. And now I'm just focusing on Academy. I'm focusing on using those resources in other ways. Now I can actually start using my resources for things like the Forge. I can start crafting artifact materials, right? I can start using my gold converter, right, if I wanted to. Wait, hang on, where do I have to go for this? What is it, Forge, I think? No, transmute. That's what it was. Let me do that. Gosh, if I can actually click there. Right, so I can go here to transmute. Now, again, these things are not inexpensive, right, to do immortal artifact materials, right? You have to think about it from a progression standpoint, which is that you hitting Castle 40 is like the first step. It's not the last step, right? Then you get to step 2, which is that now I can start using my resources for things like artifact materials. Step 3, I can start converting resources to gold. Right, once I eventually kind of get artifacts maxed out, so I can eventually start boosting the boost levels for the rest of my immortals. I can use these for the remaining dragon upper levels as well, right? There will be a lot of other reasons that you can now start using these resources. I can now focus my resources on a 4th area, which will also be when KVK is, for doing more training, for doing healing, right? These are at least 4 steps on how you will be able to use your resources, right? Let alone probably step 5, which is really an earlier step, which is your academy, right? Because eventually when you start getting to later levels of tech, right, the cost of those is going to be pretty expensive. So you really have arguably 5 areas that you have not even got to yet, right after you max all your buildings. So for me, it is confusing when I see the game and the devs wonder or decide to implement increased levels, because to me as a player, there is so much to do that you need resources for beyond just maxing all of your buildings, right, as one area. And so, for me, I do worry about it, because whether you're on a free to play perspective, it can be a turnoff, right? If you're someone new that's coming into the game, if you haven't hit Castle 40 yet and all of a sudden now they're dropping more levels on you, it is something where the average player may think to themselves, man, is this common? Is this normal? Are they just going to keep increasing levels? That can be a turnoff to some people and could also deter them away from investing or playing the game longer, or maybe just not even considering to play it at all, right? Because that precedent has been set. It's kind of like opening Pandora's box, right? Once you open it, it's very hard to close it, if not near impossible. So these are what I would categorize as worries, right? As caution from the player base, whether you're a free-to-play player or you're a spender, because even for the spender perspective, you may now be thinking to yourself, well, wow, what if they do just keep increasing levels, right? I mean, sure, it's cool that you're going to be able to spend like that, but you don't want to, a spender shouldn't hopefully have to want to spend unnecessarily, right? You want to spend for value, hopefully, right? You want to spend for something that you feel like you're getting a return on investment on from what you do spend and what you put in. You don't want to have to just keep spending to just keep getting higher levels and higher levels, right? And this is a common thing I've heard from some people that have spent a good amount of money, right? They don't want to feel like the goalpost is constantly just, it's here and now it's here and now it's here, right? It's just constantly getting moved, and that can be a turnoff for spenders as well. And then I think the last thing that I would mention on the level 40 before we move to the next point is that there really wasn't any explanation on why, right? Like there wasn't something that came out where they said, hey, this is why we're increasing the levels, right? Now I can understand maybe some things that would be increased, right, if you want to do it down the line. But honestly, the game is in a great place right now. And I just don't, again, I don't see what the reason is, also because none was given, right? There was never a reason where they said, hey, this is why we're doing this, right? And so I think that was one of the reasons I really love what they did in the Pioneer server, right? Where they came out with, it's almost like they came out with notes and they said like, hey, here's some of the big things that are going to change. Go check out the Pioneer server, give us some feedback, and hopefully they would take that in before things go live. I really liked that opportunity, but I think even more importantly, it'd be nice if they just kind of put together, maybe picked people from the community that they could bring on to look at feedback, right, to give feedback on kind of like notes before they're like officially released. I think that would be a great opportunity to do something that's more engaging. And, again, even just for someone like myself, I mean, I've been playing Kingdom Builders a pretty long time. I mean, you look at a game like Game of War, right, that came out back in 2013, right? I started playing that as one of my very first Kingdom Builders and one of the very first Kingdom Builders on mobile, along with, a multitude of other Kingdom Builders, and for myself, I've been in this unique position to really kind of do everything, right? Whether you're a player, you're an officer, you're a lead, you're someone who's in a department, you are kind of the right hand of kingdom management, a member of council, right? Someone who's led projects, jumper projects before with hundreds of people, right? My largest ones being up to about 800 people, 450 people that converted with us to Final Kingdom. I've had successes, I've had hurdles, I've had failures on just my vision, not necessarily being able to come to fruition at times. And these are things that, because I have really put myself in a position to learn, to educate myself, to gain knowledge in all these different areas, it has really given me such a broader perspective and approach on looking at all these different areas of Kingdom Builders. And I would hope that I am in somewhat of a unique position because of how much I have done, right, to really give and hopefully heed this caution, right? So anyways, that covers the level 40 plus. Now let's talk about the ToK skills. So the ToK skills I'm going to explain here is going to be the, where am I looking at? So, and probably these ones will be a little bit shorter, but for ToK skills, let's just look, right? So we can see a few here, and I believe it's just the epic. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's this one, which is guard. We have vitality touch. We have jade barrier, and then we have purification, right? So these are the new 4 ones. Now, you can see here like who they're recommended for, but the most important thing is the spend, right? So you see these stones. When I learned, it doesn't even tell me that I can click on them. So like I'm always curious like where people find these stones at. I'm sure someone will tell me down in the comments below. But the thing I really want to focus on here is how much do the stones actually cost, right? And this is something that we were able to see here. That someone showed me a screenshot for. So you can see here that to own it, right? Just to I believe this is just for the unlock level, right? It's 120 green gems. And someone can correct me if I'm wrong on this. Again, I'm just going off of that. It says I need 60 to unlock when I clicked on it in Tower Knowledge, and then it says 60. Right? Again, they don't have it unlocked. It says own 0. Right? So my assumption is I need 60 to unlock. That's 120,000 green gems, right? So let's look at what 120,000 green gems is. So if I want to buy gems, right? Like let's just look at this from like a pure just number perspective, right? I would spend $100, right? And let's just say I'm past my first purchase, right? Then there's just a little bit of extra that I'm going to get there. So even if it's 12,500, right? If I multiply this by 10, right, which would put me at about $1,000, right? I'm looking at, God, if I could do some math right quick, what is that? 125,000, right? Now, it's probably going to be a little less than that, right? You can maybe argue, maybe it's 900, 950, right, give or take. But still, again, even if you're just looking at it just from a raw number value perspective, right? Now, bear in mind, you may have some gems, some green gems left over, right? Maybe people might have 5 to 50,000 green gems on average. But if you're just looking at it from how much does it actually cost to unlock this, that is a decent amount, right? If you are going to be spending on it. Otherwise, if you have to save up that amount of green gems for a free-to-play to get that, I mean, I'm going to be honest, that's going to take a very long time, right? Just to accumulate that amount of gems, unless they are going to be adding in more events or more things to where you can farm green gems. Like, look, if they're going to add in green gem resource deposits like some other kingdom builders have, right? So I'm going to have an option to go here and I can farm green gems, then okay, right? You can maybe sell me on that. But if the game stays the way it is, right, and we look at the history, right, I think historical trends are very important, right? Every time they have released new ToK skills, they have never done this, right? It's always been a standard of, hey, I go in here, if I want to unlock something, right, that's an epic, then let me just give an example of what I don't have, right? It's 20K. I actually think the soul crystal costs for unlocking and leveling, I actually think are okay. I haven't really heard that many people complain about the high cost of them. I mean, maybe that's something we can take a look into at a later time. But for the moment, I actually do believe that the Soul Crystal, again, this is just kind of at face value without really doing a deep dive on it, right? I think it is okay for now. And by saying that, what I would really like to see here is for them to take these 4 ToK skills and revert them back to the standard epic soul crystal cost, right, for progressing an epic skill. Again, it is very hard to swallow, and this is something that I have seen vocalized by many people in the community that at least have been public about it. And pretty much everyone is speaking the same thing, which is that it just costs too much, right? And one of the great things that has always attracted me to Infinity Kingdom is the fact that it has always been more free to play friendly, and even to this point, right? I would argue that it still is, but it is going in this trend. When I see things like this happening, right, along with a few other things that kind of give you these like red flags, where you think to yourself, well, this is not something that's consistent with what they've always done, or the majority of time of what they've done. But now it seems like there's one move after another move after another move that are kind of going in this direction of being, now more kind of pay to win, more spender catering, so to speak. And that's not necessarily, saying like to any individual player. It's just the direction in which the changes are that they are making and going in is implying this. This is just one of them. Now, the other thing I'm going to touch on real quick is going to be now going to the migration system. So this is something that I think is really important because there are some major changes that are coming here when it comes to your main accounts, right? So let me give you an example first off by just zooming out. And what I do want to show and talk about is if we look at the season system that we showed before, right? So the way that the new system is going to operate within migration is that if you are in the prep season or if you're in season 1, then you are going to be able to migrate between those two seasons. If you are in season 2 and season 3, you can migrate between those two seasons. And then if everyone is in Conquest, you can migrate between those two seasons, right? Now, essentially what that means, right? And let's just, as an example, right? Let's look at some seasons here. Like these are prep seasons, right? If I look at 113, it's 72 days old, right? Now, when they eventually get into season 1, it's going to take 42 days. You can make the argument, okay, let's say season 1 starts at day 90. That means you'd have to wait 135 days, or excuse me, you once you hit about 131 days, right, will be when season 1 finishes for you, and then you'd be prepping for season 2. What this means really, and this is the big part, is that if we see a big chunk of servers go into season 2 here around mid-January, what that means is that those players will not be able to migrate their main accounts to a newer server, right? Specifically, a newer server that is in season 1 or in the prep stage. And that is because of the way that the new system works. It's like pairing it. Prep in season 1, you can migrate between each other, but you can't migrate out, right? So you cannot, at least from the understanding, we do not believe that you can migrate up or down. Again, I know for certain though that it is going down. So the example, and I'm pretty sure it is the other way around as well, right? Is my soft assumption based on what I've been told. Right. So again, this is why it is a little concerning because it has never been this way, right? If you look at when IK came out, right, they said that, hey, you can migrate to any server that is 90 days or older, right? And I have always loved that, right? Again, coming from other kingdom builders where you may have to take a longer amount of time before you can even migrate to a server. And this is important because I've played games where, and I'm sure others have as well, where you are looking at really realistically waiting, 150 days before you can migrate to your home server. So the fact that you can go somewhere within 3 months once migration opens is absolutely fantastic. I think IK has done such a great job at allowing players to migrate to newer servers earlier. I think the current system that was in place was ideal. And I'm going to give you a few reasons why. Number one, as a main account, you may find yourself wanting to migrate to a newer server for a multitude of reasons. You might go to a newer server because you have a friend there that's in a newer server. You might have made a new account, started out in a new server, and you've been helping that kingdom develop, and now you just want to bring your main account over. You could have maybe been a part of a jumper project, right, or a jump group, and they landed in a new server, and now they want to bring their main accounts over, right? This is very common. This happens all the time in these types of games. And so that would be a third reason on why you want to go. And then the fourth reason could be maybe you just don't want to play in the server that you're in anymore. Maybe it's just a war server, right? It's just turned into civil wars, constantly fighting. You just don't want to play there. You want to get out. And then maybe you just want to end up going to a new server, right? But you want options. These are just at minimum 4 reasons on why players would want to go to new servers. And if the game is denying them that access, I will say, right, that's a turnoff. That is not something that players will feel good about, because I can tell you even for myself, right, it is a little disheartening because, for at least again in my situation, I love doing jump projects, but more specifically, I like doing them so that way I can eventually stop doing them, right, and just kind of be one and done, right? And there's other people that like doing jump projects for the reason of they want to try and make a kingdom their home, right? And so they can bring their main accounts there. Other times you'll have individual players or just an alliance that wants to go to a new server, right, in hopes of just making it a new home for them. And so I think a good solution to this would be to revert the system back to what it was. Allow anyone to migrate. Right now, let me address the kind of counter argument here, where some people may say, well, what happens if, a level 45 or a level 50 account comes to the server? Bear in mind, this is why you have a migration limit, right? Let's not forget, this is the most important thing to managing your kingdom, right? I'm sure some people have kind of heard that saying, right? It's we should be working smarter, not harder. And an example of this is the smart system that the developers have already put in the game. They've given you the tools to essentially self-govern. They've given you some tools, right? Let me be clear there. But an example of this is if I go here to my migration limit and it's set at 1. Remember, if players are increasing their castle level and upgrading themselves, there is a high chance that most of the players that are going to get to 45 and arguably higher than that will be exceeding this 1 million power limit. So passively, they will already not be able to migrate to a newer server because they will most likely be exceeding that 1 mil limit, right? That's just one. And that will passively happen just from them progressing and developing their account. Number 2, if you really want to allow some level of what I would consider to be like true autonomy, then an example of how you can also solve this is you just add in another option here for 750K and arguably 500K. Problem solved, right? Now you would never have someone who's above Castle 40 be able to migrate in without them reaching out to the kingdom first to see if they would raise the limit, right? I think what we're really seeing here is like too much oversight, right? The game, it's like the devs are like trying to apply systems and restrictions that they think, right, are like helping everyone. And it's not that it has ill intentions. It's not as though it's a bad idea. But remember, we are playing kingdom builders, right? The objective in this genre, in these games, is to build your kingdom, right? But build the kingdom the way you want, right? The uniqueness of how different kingdoms can be played differently. They can develop differently. They can be governed differently. That is the unique characteristic we really should be hitting on, right? Is allowing the kingdoms their own autonomy on self-governing themselves. And really, from a developer standpoint, what my hope would be to see is to give them tools, give them more support tools, give them more options on how they can self-govern, right? Because then that's less work the developers have to do when it comes to assisting or helping the kingdoms, right? As far as instead of them kind of coming in and saying like, hey, here's an executive order, what we're going to do, and it's really to help you. Instead, just give us the tools to do that ourselves, right? That would be fantastic. And that's really what I would love to see happen, because at the moment, there's no kingdom builder on the market that really does that. And if you really want to take it a step further, just give us a custom power option, right? Instead of giving us limits, right? Just allow us to have a custom limit that we set, right? So if you want to have the default limit here, or if you just want to add another button that just says custom, right? Or set your limit, right? That would be fantastic. If we want to set it at 500K, if we want to set it at 1.23567, million, let us do that. To me, really, that would be the ultimate thing here, right? Is just give us a custom limit. We can set it at whatever we want. And then you can say something like, by default, right, before anyone is able to migrate, right, you can give the king the option to maybe set that before it happens, or maybe you push it down to 500K, right, again, if you really want to just apply some safeguards, and then let whoever is going to be the king or queen set that limit, right, for whatever they want. So my thought is, do it to custom, but if not, at minimum, at least add in a 750K, maybe a 500K here, right? And then your problem is solved, right? You don't have to worry about the migration, but kind of adding in too many oversight, too many hoops to jump through, right? To me, it just comes off as too much, right? I'm sure that it's with good intentions, but it is just too much. Then let's get to the jumper portion here, right? So now let's talk about briefly with jumpers. So pretty much the same thing applies, right? The difference here is that now jumpers arguably would have to go into servers that are in the prep or season one, right? But you'd have to make sure that you time it out. So an example would be is, let's say that when a server, just as an example, let's say when a server hits 90 days, right? They will then go into KVK season one. Season one lasts 45 days. So that means that day 135 is when they would get out. Like once that hits, right? Let's just imagine they get out of season one and now they're going into season two prep. What that means is you would have to join a server now, either a brand new server or a server where you would hang out for a month or two, however long it would be, right? But you would have to leave before they go into season two, which means that if you join a server at day 45, you would have to pretty much leave by day 130 and then go to the newest server, right? That just came out. And so that's basically what the limitation is there. Now, I will say this on jumpers. This topic is not necessarily, I want to say, kind of as important, so to speak, when it comes to like the change that's actually happening. It's not as though it's something that's extremely impactful when it comes to the new process. But what is impactful and what is important is giving players a heads up with more than enough time to make these adjustments, right? So think about all the players that currently have been preparing jumpers, that have spent money on their jumpers, right? If it arguably means that once this goes into effect right around, mid-January, that could be something where all of these players lose pretty much out on going to a new server, right? Which is the whole point, right, of doing it. And, if that happens, you might have some players that have spent thousands of dollars, maybe more than that, right? Or they've put in months of time onto their accounts in hopes of eventually going to the newest or a new server. And once this effect kicks in, they would not be able to do that. Arguably, they'd only be able to go to servers that are in season two, which could be, as an example, like 1 through 92 or 1 through 115. And that is not the newest server. And it's not really ideal, right? And I think, a level of professional courtesy is to right, make an announcement, give these players more than enough time. I would say at minimum, you would want to give them a month. And you say, hey, look, in 30 days from now, right, for anyone, right, that has current jumpers, right, you will still be allowed. If you have an account that is at Castle 8 or below, and you are in a server that is going into season 2 or later, right, you have 30 days to move that account. I think that would be more than enough time. Because again, we have to kind of also go off of how frequent do new servers come out. It's not like servers are coming out every day, right? So they might only have an option to choose from maybe 5 to 8 servers, right? Which would be like the next servers that come out within that month's time to then jump to. And so I think giving them a month of time would be more than enough, right? I think that would be fair, along with putting a game-wide announcement out, letting people know, hey, look, this is a change that's coming to jumpers. We are going to give everyone a 30-day period to move your account to a new server. Once that happens, this will go into effect. Players appreciate a heads-up notice. They appreciate when you give them enough time to I don't want to say settle their affairs, right, but to make their accommodations with their account. Even if the change is happening regardless, just giving them a heads up and enough time to go through with it, right, and to figure out what they're going to do is always appreciated, right? That is how you show good faith, and you are able to develop good relations with your player base, and also just a part of how you build a thriving community. Nobody wants to get hit, with a slap in the face and kind of this thing that's coming out of right field or left field, right, whatever side of the field you really want to go with. So again, that would be what I would say they're on jumpers. The fifth thing we're going to talk about now is the epic return. So there was some screenshots shown for epic return, and some of you guys know, right, this is where you have those 3 immortals that will come back, right? Charles, Genghis, and Baldwin. And someone was showing me that on the Epic return that it was saying, and I saw this myself as well. I believe it was yesterday, or the day before when it was still up, is that you saw there was like 6K, it was like 6K green gems and like 6K VIP, right? If you look at the grand promotion bundle, you will notice that in these bundles, right, it is actually 12.5K green gems and then 12.5K VIP items, or excuse me, VIP points. And so, things like this, I think, are really important. Now, I don't know if this was intended, because I almost really want to say that I've seen the Epic monthly return at the same rate and the same amount of green gems and VIP before, right, that you would see in a grand promotion bundle. But for some reason, when I looked at this yesterday or the day before when it was still up, I saw that this was pretty much a little less than half that it was cut by. And I just think it's really important that games stay consistent, because these things, when these changes happen, they will not go unnoticed, right? People will pay attention to these things, and people will bring these things up. This is why, if games want to have a very healthy community and player base, right, when it comes to engagement, it's good to be consistent. And if you are going to make a change, then at least put out a notice ahead of time and give a reason, give an explanation. These are things that are very important to players, and I can tell you, even for myself, when I see system mails that are sent out, when I see any kind of announcements from Infinity Kingdom in any official capacity, I always read them, because I think that we owe it to any game, right, to pay attention to these things. And I also think that in a kind of reciprocal relationship, right, which is the player to the developer and developer to the player, that it should hopefully come across as just a professional courtesy, right, that you want to inform your player base of what's happening. And then the last thing I'm going to touch on, which is loosely connected to the kind of the Epic return adjustment that we saw, which is just generally in relation to patch notes, hotfixes, and changes. With patch notes and hotfixes specifically, I think it's very important that that the game provides as much detail as it possibly can when it comes to patch notes. And that can go like, I will give an example. So here's an example that I'll give for what I'm talking about. So let's go, where's my patch notes? So we'll look at patch notes here. And an example of this would be when it says things like new level limits, right? How many new level limits, right? Is it 5 new level limits? That means it'll go to 45, and then this one will go to 50, right? These are examples of like the very important details that are often missed, right? Or just often not included in patch notes. These are great things that a developer has the opportunity to include, right? These are details that we as a community would love to know. And then you look at another example here. If I go into, oh gosh, let me see here. I don't know if it necessarily talks about the migration stuff, but let me just give an example of here on Immortals, right? Like an optimization here. Let me scroll down. Where is it? Okay, like here, like a balance adjustment. So an example here would be, give a reason, right? Why are you making the adjustment to Attila, right? What's the need for it? Did players ask for this? Is it coming because of back-end data that you were gathering and comparisons and stats that you were seeing with maybe water was outperforming some other elements, right? Depending, like, what is the actual reason on why the change is happening? That is very important. These types of minute details are what we as a community want to see, right? We want to read those things, right? Because we think it's very important. And especially if you're a developer, right, giving a reason is I cannot tell you how appreciative players will be, because you took the extra step to give us some kind of detail on why the change is happening. I think the same thing, right? You look at energy burst, added a cooldown, skill can only be triggered. Okay, well, the question here is, why is this change happening, right? There's no why, there's no reason that's being provided. Same thing with vulnerabilities, right? Weaken the effect of troop vulnerabilities. Okay, well, what's the new percentage? When you look at strengthen the effect of element vulnerabilities, okay, what's the new percentage and why is it happening, right? These things do not take that long to add in and to write into the notes, but I can tell you that for myself as a player, as a member of the community and the player base, these are things I would love to see, right? Because I think it gives us more of an understanding, or I should just say an understanding at all, on why the change is happening, right? This is so important, right, to build a very healthy and engaging and more so respectable community, because you as a developer, right, and this just goes for any developers, you are taking the time out of your day to explain these reasonings, and that, I can tell you, will always be appreciated, right, regardless if people agree with it or not. Just the fact that you took the time to explain should hopefully at least garner at minimum the respect, right, and the appreciation from the players. And then, you can kind of go from there. All right, so this is my 40-minute video. I wasn't actually expecting for this to go on as long as it is. I'm pretty sure that we have now officially covered everything here that I wanted to touch on. And again, at least with the big main stuff that I want to touch on. And again, I want to hear what you guys think as a community, right? I know I said I was going to put this video out. I hope you all appreciate it. And I definitely want to hear from you, right, on each of the 6 points that I touched on. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Why or why not? If there's anything else that you want to mention, maybe some other things, and I'm sure there will be some things that I just did not cover in this video, but let me know in the comments, right? Let me know what you guys think about. For those of you who maybe watch this all the way through, right? Let me know what you think about overall, as far as the explanations I did, right? If you like those, do you agree? Do you disagree? Why or why not as well? Again, let me know anything and everything you guys are thinking in the comments down below. We will also be sending this video off to the IK team along with our doc, our feedback and suggestions doc, and I'll also be making another feedback and suggestions, specific feedback and suggestions video, right, for like new additions and things that could hopefully be coming in. I know we were sharing that around the IK Discord. And yeah, I'm pretty much going to end it there. I hope you guys appreciated this. I always like doing these kinds of videos because, I think one thing I will end this on is, there are always great ways to provide constructive criticism, right? Because the fact is that a lot of us, whether you're watching this video or you're someone who plays Infinity Kingdom, and I'll speak for myself, at least at minimum here, is I love the game, right? I would not still be here. I would not be making content. I would not still be playing, right, this game over other kingdom builders if I did not believe in Infinity Kingdom. But at the same time, if you are a friend of someone, hopefully as a friend, you would be honest with someone, right? You would be truthful with them. And that in and of itself is a form of constructive criticism. It doesn't mean that we have to come out and be mean or be rude or point fingers or demand changes, otherwise we're going to quit. No, in my opinion, that is not an appropriate way to go about providing feedback, right, and giving suggestions, right? We should hopefully try and explain things as best we can, right? Have thought out thoughts, no pun intended, right, with how we're explaining things. Because if you do it in a professional and respectable way, that can be received a lot better by the listener, the interpreter, right? Rather than if we're just coming out and kind of giving them like well, hey, just fix that, noob. You know what I mean? Like, that's not something that is going to be received well, whether it's by a developer or arguably probably anyone else. So I think the way that we speak, the way that we are giving that information is just as equally important as when we're coming up with the idea and a reasoning, whether it's the pros and cons or why we think this is something that could change or could be added. So that's my final thought there that I will leave you with. That is it for me. Again, I hope you all enjoyed this video, and until next time, we'll catch y'all later.